Okay, we're on. Perfect. Sounds like we're on. Good afternoon and welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So it is May 6th, 1:30. So we're going to go ahead and call this meeting order. And we're going to go ahead and start off, although it's not on the agenda, I'd love to start off with a Pledge of Allegiance. So Stephanie, if you want to start us off with the pledge, that would be great. Appreciate it. Republic, one nation. Thank you, Stephanie. And with that, we're going to move into our public comment. So the first portion of the meeting is reserved for public comment. I believe we're allowing for 5 minutes of public comment at our GSA meetings. So at this time, if there is any public comment, I would ask you to come to the podium, or if we have any public comment online, please let me know. Looks like we have no public comment at this time, so we're going to move on to item number 2, which is an action item, approval of the Madera County Groundwater Sustainability Agency Committee meeting minutes. Do we have someone to review this, or are we just voting and approving? I don't think. Perfect, they've been reviewed. Do we have any public comment in regards to the minutes? Seeing none?
Well, I wasn't here for those minutes. I'll move to approve it.
All right, and I'll second. So it's roll call, please.
Supervisor Wamhaugh.
Yes.
Supervisor McCauley.
Yes.
Vote passes 2-0.
Perfect. Thank you. We're going to move right on to item number 3, which again is an action item. Consideration and recommendation to the Board of Directors to approve a resolution adopting the Madera County Groundwater Sustainability Agency Committee rules. Stephanie?
Thank you, directors. 1 minute. Okay, we're ready to screen share.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Stephanie and Agneson here with Emily Garcia. We'll cover this item. Briefly, the committee was created in January of this year to provide greater transparency and more opportunities for public participation. Board meetings, of course, are one opportunity for participation, but this creates another one. And this also creates an opportunity for staff to show items earlier in the process. So the committee was formed in January. We discussed rules in March and showed draft rules last month. And now Emily will review those rules and changes.
Thank you, and hello, Board of Directors. Today we are reviewing and revisiting the GSA committee rules that were previously presented on the April 1st GSA committee meeting. A brief summary of the rules are before you, and they outline the meeting schedule and quorum, as well as the officers and responsibilities. During the previous committee meeting on April 1st, the public expressed the need for a longer comment period, which was previously 3 minutes. The suggested time was to be 5 minutes. Therefore, that has been updated to allow comment period time to be 5 minutes per speaker. The public also expressed the interest of adding agenda items, and therefore under the agenda structure, language has been added to allow suggestions during the comment period at the beginning of the committee meeting, but still to the discretion of the Board of Directors. That concludes the revisions that have been made along with the original rules, and the full rules are attached to this item.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Stephanie. Director Wamhoff, do you have any questions in regards to the item presented?
No, I've no questions. Everything seems pretty sound and reasonable. I have nothing else to add or questions.
Thank you. My only suggestion would be is that in our agendas, if we can clearly state in the public comment period that that is the opportunity for folks to make suggestions, and then perhaps provide some clarification around how public comment works, similar to how we do with our Board of Supervisors meetings. That would be helpful, I think, for the public.
Will do.
Excellent. So with that, we're going to go out to public comment. Any public comment on this item?
Noah Lopez, Madera Ag Water Association. I just wanted to express our appreciation for adding that language that we had requested about a way to bring an item to the committee and get it on the agenda. Really appreciate the addition of that language. Did have an idea on the public comment. Appreciate it being extended to 5 minutes as opposed to 3 minutes. I still think that there would be, or could foresee possibility where you have a very technical item or a very nuanced issue that might require kind of a longer extended public comment from members of the public. And so could be cool to add language in there that just allowed for comment longer than 5 minutes at the discretion of the committee or the directors. Don't know if that could fit in there, but I think it would be helpful. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. I would say that, one thing that may be helpful, particularly in regards to your suggestion, Noah, and around the concept of adding additional agenda items would be for, folks to reach out to your sitting supervisor or myself or Kara Gonzalez in order to have these conversations in advance of the meeting. So that way we can get that information and ensure that they're included. So you're always allowed to send comments in advance, and we do appreciate that. And oftentimes, while I don't speak for everybody, whoever is chair of the particular meeting has some, latitude in whether or not they're going to allow for folks to continue. So hopefully we don't run into any issues, but if we do, we can certainly revisit these concepts.
I do have another question. So if members of the public were to add items onto the agenda, what does that process look like and the timing of that? Is that something that they can add on that day or at that particular meeting to include on that particular agenda?
So the process was that they would come to a public comment, suggest a comment, presentation or a topic, and then the chair could add it to a future meeting agenda. That way, if there's a staff presentation or additional information, there's some time to prepare.
Gotcha. Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Perfect.
And I think it comes down to education too, making sure that, when folks show up to meetings like this, that they know that this is their time. And I think if we include it in sort of the announcement, like what we do with public comment, just to make it very clear for members who do show up, knowing that they have the ability to add things and that this is their meeting. Ours.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And this is an action item, so we will be looking for a motion.
And I'll move to approve.
Perfect. Second. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Director Wamhoff,
Yes.
Director McCauley.
Yes.
Vote passes 2-0.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to item number 4, which is an action item. Consideration and recommendation to the Board of Directors to issue a request for proposal for agricultural measurement methods for farm units for 2026 and beyond.
Thank you, Stephanie Agneson, Director of Water and Natural Resources, and I'll be joined with Alida Allen for this presentation shortly. Let's go ahead and share the screen. All right, so as you know, the county GSA has a really robust menu of choices for measurement methods. We have meters with rules around meters. Those are private meters. And then we have 2 satellite measurement methods, IRAWatch, now called Hydrosat, and Land IQ. So we have a lot that we are offering. This also ends up costing a lot. So if one were looking for places to cut This would be it. Most GSAs with allocations are only offering one primary measurement method. So I thought we could respond to some of the questions from last time about surveying growers with some information from a past survey. So this was about a year ago. Things have clearly changed in some way, but I think it's helpful to share. So if you ask people how confident they are in the accuracy of the measurement method they chose of those three, you have about 50% saying they're very confident or confident. A fair amount, though, the majority, or almost a majority, in the neutral category, and very few people coming in at not so confident. I think that's a good thing. It means they've gravitated towards something that they feel comfortable with. And what we've maintained is really the GSA itself is neutral. We don't really care what you choose. We just want you to choose something, and you need to stick with it for a full year. We also asked in the same survey, should Madera County GSAs offer multiple measurement methods long-term? And you can see vast majority, close to 90% saying yes. So this is clearly something at least a year ago that people want. Interestingly, when we ask how often people monitor their data, more than half are really only checking monthly. And that's one of the reasons we mail hard copy reports as well as email reports to people once a month during the irrigation season. We do have, though, a significant contingency, 30%-ish, that wants daily measurements. So I think that all explains how we got to the place where we have these three measurement methods. IRRAWatch or Hydrosat is providing daily data. Land IQ, we're processing on a monthly basis. And then we have meters running as well. So our next steps with this process are to issue an RFP. And we used this term without explaining it last time, so we wanted to add some explanations. An RFP is really the way that public agencies purchase services in a competitive way. We describe the service we want, and that is actually in your packet. The services then have a timeline, and then you get different proposals back and review them. And what we'd like to suggest is doing that in public, having the vendors present here at the committee, and having presentations plus some interview questions, as well as having some kind of paper questionnaire mailed to growers afterwards so they can give feedback to us. And we could include a bit.ly link with the meeting and the presentations there so they can watch that if they didn't show up and watch it live. Two key questions would be in the questionnaire in our proposal. One is, do you want these multiple satellite measurement methods? That's a simple yes or no. And then what is your preferred measurement method? And the paper rather than email is being used mainly because we do have some folks who prefer a more traditional format. When we do e-surveys, you can see from my survey slides, we get a little bit over a 10% response rate, which is in the world of surveys, not bad, but it's certainly not great. And we'd like a stronger response. And I think we could get that with paper. All right, now Alita Allen is going to review the RFP itself.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. I'm going to go over the highlights of the RFP. The county GSA oversees 220,000 acres, and that includes never irrigated. Also, the RFP has 5 components. One is success and experience, cost, reference, qualification, and project understanding and approach. The next thing is public presentations and interviews with the vendors will be held. The next thing is questionnaires to growers will be given out. And final, the GSA staff will give recommendation to the GSA committee for a firm or firms once grower feedback and presentations and interviews with vendors are complete.
All right, so you have in front of you a staff recommendation. We're hoping that with your recommendation, this would then go to the board of directors, the full board, and then we would come back to this committee for the vendor presentations, interviews, and follow up with the written questionnaire. But happy to answer any questions about the process.
Thank you, Alita, and thank you, Stephanie. And I want to say I do appreciate how color coordinated we are this afternoon. Emily, I guess you missed the notice, but that's quite all right. Director Wamhoff, do you have any questions in regards to the RFP proposal?
Yeah, so the RFP, are we intending to only utilize one service?
The RFP gives the ability to have more than one. So if after the questionnaire, we have people, the majority saying they want more than one satellite measurement, or we have kind of a nice split with equal numbers, we have the ability to do that. But the key is to have that conversation in a public context so that we're really clear on the cost that we incur. Because as you'll see in a few items, the budget for this item is high because of the multiple choices we offer.
So what is the, I guess, what is the intent with certain measuring devices, or whether it's EarWatch, LandIQ, or meters? What is the actual intent with the RFP versus what we're already doing? Because we already offer 3 services.
True. All of our contracts are over at the end of this year.
Okay.
So we're at a good point for going out and revisiting this content
Okay.
again.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
Sorry, should have included that.
Perfect. And so I guess at this time, we will open it up to public comment. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mark Peters, Madera Subbasin. Hi, guys. Hi, thank you. Okay, that presentation helped immensely. It gave the compelling, and Jordan, you were after this, but what was the compelling reason to do it? And I think it said, we have 2, is it possible to go to 1? That was going to be my first comment, is I didn't hear a compelling reason, but now I think I understand it better. So recognizing that, we're going to go through an RFP process. But then that's where we really need to get grower feedback. And I appreciate the changes immensely. But just so you understand, let me give you my own feedback. LandIQ doesn't work. LandIQ is hard copy, snail mail. It comes in late. It goes through the department. You get it 2 months after the end of the month. And when you're trying to measure your water, that one can't be the only one. And I'll just say, there's not many people here, but we can't just have LandIQ, because many of us do go in more than once a month, and absolutely every month, to follow the data and know where we are and make decisions based upon where we are, especially for the following year. And then the second one, and I'll just say this from personal experience, because staff has heard me moan a little bit about EarWatch comes on board. What's this process? How's this data work? Help me, help me. Finally, I have it inside me. And then they get bought out, and Hydrostat owns them, and Hydrostat wants to develop their own program, if you will. And so another one, and oh my gosh, another one, help me, let me understand. Well, darn, I don't want to see a third one, frankly. And I believe, and I can just say this, Stephanie said last month, the accuracy of all of them, and I don't mean to put any words in your mouth, but the accuracy of all of them, satellite measurements, is about the same. And I have studied all the other ones on OpenET, and they do follow the same pattern. I get all that. So I still don't have a compelling reason to leave Hydrostat. I know it, I follow it. In our own business, just to speak to it, in our own business, we have the flow meters. We don't turn them in, but we have the flow meters. We monitor. In one particular property, Hydrostat measures lower than our data. In another particular property, it measures higher than our own flow meters. And why do I say that? I don't get to cherry pick, and that's a smart move, by the way, because if you get to cherry pick, you're just messing up the whole process. Ultimately, it measures about the right amount of water. I personally am happy with what's coming in and my ability to manipulate it and understand it and report it to everyone that needs it reported to. And I would just hate to go through it a third time. But with that, I'll leave it right there. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mark.
I think we know what his survey is going to say.
Noah Lopez, Mawa. Our comment on this is really about the RFP, and I'll start with some of the comments Mark made. I think this RFP doesn't address one of the key desires of growers in the subbasin. We heard it a bunch at the last GSA community meeting, and we hear it from our members all the time, which is the desire for an accounting platform, which is inexplicit or is undeniably tied to the measurement system, right? The measurement system and the accounting platform kind of are integrated together, and you can't get away from that. I want to maybe highlight the difference between an accounting platform and a portal. What we have right now with Hydrostat Eurowatch is a portal, right? You can go online and you can look at your daily ET with some time delay, and you can see what's happening. But that's not an accounting platform. An accounting platform is more like a bank account, right? You have debits and credits. It shows what your allocation is, any carryover water, any overages you've had, any surface water you've imported. And then it shows some sort of balancing of that budget, what you've used using that satellite ET measurement. And so right now we don't have an accounting platform, and there's a big desire for that from growers in the basin. This RFP focuses on measurement, which makes sense, right? We need to, I think what we've heard, and it makes total sense. We're paying for 2 different satellite ET measurement systems right now. It'd be great to consolidate that to one or find some way to have some savings there. But I think using this RFP approach where you ask for a measurement data system and then later perhaps come back with another RFP for an accounting platform is going to end up with a less than ideal product. And I'll highlight in the current RFP, the one that's before you, there's a sentence that says that GSAs are currently have a developed and operational data management system, so development and implementation of a data management system is not required and or requested, end quote. And so this RFP isn't looking for any sort of data management or accounting platform. And I think what's going to happen is that we're going to get proposals for measurement systems, and they're going to be disjointed from an accounting platform. And then we're going to have to go out and get proposals for an accounting platform, and that's going to be a very weird and not very efficient way to get a better finished product. And to go to what Mark said, LandIQ does offer daily ET data. It's just not the way we do it here in this subbasin. The LandIQ data comes in monthly, and it goes to David's Engineering, who then does those snail mail, as Mark Peters put it, paper reports to growers. There's a way to take LandIQ data and have it on a daily basis in an accounting platform. And so I think revising this RFP would be advisable. Looking at a more holistic measurement and accounting platform RFP is probably the way to go forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Noah.
I have a question. To any of your understanding, is this type of software currently being used with accounting in conjunction with ET data?
Yes, there are 4 or 5 accounting platforms that are competing and are operating in the Valley now. And we have had looked at these products and got some quotes. They are more expensive because of the 3 measurement methods than they would be. And they're used to operating with 1. So the idea was we could stagger the RFPs, have a good discussion about whether we want all of these multiple measurement methods. And if we do, then we can choose an accounting platform. I did want to address the LandIQ daily data. There is a product, but it's being piloted this summer. So I think when we offer this request for proposals to the public, we are going to get different products than we have now. And I think that will be useful. Different costs as well, which is what happens when contracts end.
So
Go ahead.
is there a way to, I know you said stagger the RFPs, but if it can all be on one platform, is that still what you're saying? To still be on one platform for the accounting portion to work in conjunction with the ET platform?
All of the ET platforms I have seen are separate services. So for example, a question we should ask in the interview process is how would your data integrate with an ET platform? That's key.
Okay.
Now, some of them, if we simplified entirely, and perhaps this is where Noah was going, like if you just wanted LandIQ, you could use their platform but it doesn't really show you as much of the ins and outs, like your credit.
Credits, balance, carryovers.
Exactly.
yeah.
It's just showing use, I think, at this point. But I mean, maybe we broaden it a little bit and ask to see how it would integrate in an accounting platform, see what we get. But a lot of this is a bit of a fishing trip. We think we know what's there, but we're not sure who is going to bite.
Right. Well, if we could make it a little more vague, perhaps to potentially include how they would integrate, at least so we can have that information and be a portion of discussion
Sure.
moving
We are
forward.
happy to add that to the RFP, and who knows what products might get proposed, or sometimes people team up when they propose. So perhaps the vendor offering the ET measurement might team with the platform and propose both. We're open to that.
Perfect. Any additional questions, Director? All right, and then I just want to reiterate again, we're going to be doing the interview process in a public setting. And, folks from the audience will have an opportunity to provide comment during that interview process. Is that your intention?
Yes, and I
Perfect.
think potentially we would share some questions ahead of time with the vendors. Of course, when we interview in a public agency, we try to ask the same questions over and over. So I think we might as well share them with people ahead of time. Otherwise, the first person gets surprised and then the rest, not so much.
And then I think we're hopeful to receive proposals for more than just EarWatch and Land IQ, correct?
I think there are 4 to 5 vendors operating in this space.
Okay.
So yes, I hope.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll add language to tweak the RFP. We are hoping to take this to the board to have a similar discussion.
Okay. Did we have additional public comment? Come on up.
Thank you, Supervisors. Devin Avilas with Agri-Rural Cooperative. The only other comment I was going to make is when we go out for these RFPs, because we're looking at this, all right, right now you're offering 3 programs, which is what the growers want. Fine, right? That's roughly going to be 600,000. So over 20% of the GSA admin fees that are received is going to go towards that. All I am thinking is hopefully over time, we'll find a way to reduce the number of options. So I don't know if Stephanie, if we can ask only for an annual renewal for these, or do they have to be multi-year? That was going to be my comment. So thank you.
Thank you, Devin.
Larkin Harmon, a grower on the west side and with Clayton Water District. So when talking about all these RFPs, I think that an accounting platform is definitely something that needs to be feathered and of utmost importance as the allocations start getting smaller and smaller. More people are going to be going toward it more often than just once a month. Right now, I think people feel like they have a liberal amount of water to use. So maybe they're not going to be checking it as much as they are going forward. So I think the accounting platform is definitely key. I guess my question would be, if we are sending the Land IQ data, we're paying for Land IQ, then I believe it's going to David's Engineering, then they're mailing everything out. So if we eliminated it going to David's Engineering and got an accounting platform, how much money would we save there that we could donate towards the accounting platform? So I'm not sure exactly how the county's budgets are set up or when their contracts, end and start. But if we can save money on something that maybe isn't as useful and put it towards the accounting platform that would be more useful, I think that would really help things out. And, maybe it would be a nice option if growers could go in there and add things, and then the county can verify it and take it out of there if it's not legit or however it goes. But I think that the accounting platform is very necessary at this point going forward. We really don't know how many credits we have unless it comes out monthly. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. All right. Any additional public comment? Any online? Seeing none, we're going to bring it back for motion.
All right, move to approve.
And I will second.
Director Walmhoff,
Yes.
Director McCauley.
Yes.
Vote passes 2-0.
Thank you. So our next item, item number 5, is an action item, consideration and recommendation to the Board of Directors to approve a resolution adopting the groundwater flow meter rule refinement for the use of privately owned and operated groundwater flow meters as a primary measurement method for allocation tracking in Madera County Groundwater Sustainability Agency or Chowchilla, Madera, and Delta Mendota subbasins.
Thank you. All right, Stephanie Agneson, your Director of Water and Natural Resources. I'll be joined with Jacinta Cabral shortly to talk through this. The current requirements for meters are really based on growers acting as their own utility, which means they have to make sure they're taking monthly meter reads, the meter's calibrated, we know where the meter can irrigate, and really that they're communicating all of that and on a regular basis. We've had a fair amount of success with this, despite having to roll it out really quickly. So just to walk through this, because it's a bit small, we get on a quarterly basis close to 600 submissions of meter data. It's a lot of data that comes in. The growers are the ones taking measurements using a QR code sticker that's on the meter. And what we've noticed is that many people are very successful, but there is a growing number of folks where this is probably not the best measurement method for them. So the sorts of things we notice are we get missing data or late data or data that's not usable. We can't read the screen. There are some installations that appear upon closer examination to not be quite right. We're having some challenges getting meters recalibrated, and I think we have solutions to all of these. And then a little bit where people are mingling surface water and groundwater. And of course, we want to give you credit for the surface water. We're only trying to measure the groundwater. So what staff needs and is kind of two things. One, we want to make this much more helpful to growers, but we also need to get the folks where this isn't working out over to a satellite measurement method. So here's a summary of comments from talking with growers. Great desire to continue using meters as their primary measurement method. We had some initial issues with the portal that are fixed. We hear that it is very inconvenient, if not impossible, to take a meter off in the middle of the irrigation season. So I think we have a solution to that, extending the time period for calibrating a bit. There is a make and model that is giving an error message, a recurring error message of empty pipe when there is flow there, but we've had other weird error messages that we've seen. We've noticed that people need some flexibility in case they get sick or go on vacation in terms of our time for submitting data. And we've had some clarification questions about what to do when the meter goes bad. We also did some vendor interviews, which we didn't talk about last time. And vendors noted that there were some recurring issues with some people. Again, it's a small number, but we don't want to create a loophole for kind of good data collection with meters. There's also been some confusion that our sticker was somehow an approval of the meter. The sticker really is just like a QR code, like in a restaurant to get the menu up. So Jacinta Cabral is going to walk through what was proposed last month and a few modifications. Red.
Good afternoon. Here are the meter rule refinements that were presented at our last committee meeting on 4/1/2025, with some additional suggestions listed in red for the committee to review today. Starting off with meter reads, still requiring meter reads to be submitted between the 1st and the 10th of the month, and still suggesting a grace period between the 11th and the 20th of the month. An additional clarification has been added stating allocation reports cannot be issued if data is not received by the 20th of the month. Regarding missing meters, still noting that missing 2 months of data may result in the farm unit being moved to a satellite measurement method. Additional clarification has been added regarding Land IQ being the current default method, but could change. Nothing has changed for surface water, still requiring surface water to be measured by a separate meter to avoid commingling of surface water and groundwater. Nothing has changed regarding calibration, still requiring calibration of flow meters to be conducted every 2 years and extending the calibration date range to the end of the year that it is due. Nothing has changed regarding meter replacement, still requiring new meter stickers to be issued if meters are replaced or if meter stickers are removed, lost, or tampered with. Also, still noting that meter reads should be taken before removing the meter and after reinstalling the meters. Regarding the third-party review, still requesting the ability of a third party to review unusual low water use. As before, aspects of it would include a review of the data submitted, meter installation, and meter calibration reports. Additionally, reviewing of the irrigation practices and schedules have been added to the third-party review process. Requirements regarding stickers for backup meters has been removed, and recommendations addressing this are listed on the following slide. Additions and updates to meter rule refinements. This slide lists refinements that are new for the committee to review. Number one, to help address backup meter install process, we have outlined steps that need to be taken when meter failure occurs. This includes taking photos of failed meter readings to show the last reading. Next is to notify GSA staff of meter failures as soon as possible. Also, we suggest that new meters are installed within 10 days of a meter failure, and new stickers are acquired from the GSA staff within that time. Finally, as mentioned in the previous slide, we are requesting photos to be taken of the new meter and meter read once meter is installed. These steps will help to address meter failures promptly and to document the occurrence. The second item that has been suggested is regarding meter calibration. It is suggested that the purchase receipt dates may be used as proof of calibration within 2 years of purchase. This would only be allowed for brand new meters and with the original calibration certificates. And lastly, we are providing additional clarification that if farm units have been removed from meters as a primary measurement method, the farm units will need to be reapproved and to be able to use meters again the following year. Thank you.
And with that, so staff has reviewed the rules, happy to get more feedback, and then we're hoping that it can be seen by the board of directors, the full board. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Justinta. Director Wamhoff, do you have any questions?
Yeah, approximately what percentage of growers are using meters as their primary measurement method?
About 20.
It's still a pretty decent number.
It is.
Of that 20%, approximately how many of them are having significant issues, like not reporting within a couple months, those types of things? Just trying to see how pervasive this issue is.
I'm going to say it's like 10 to 20. However, it has been growing recently. So what we're trying to do is get those folks to a measurement method that works. And there's no clear criteria for doing that.
Okay. And I know, when EraWatch was first implemented, there was a lot of concern regarding accuracy of data and those types of things. And I know we did a reboot of some sort as well. And I think after that, and more people like Mark over here became more comfortable with it, and he studied the data. I believe it's getting to a point now where people are much more comfortable with that, and at least have a sense of ease that the accuracy of satellite data is actually pretty good. And I'd be curious to know some of the costs involved with doing meters, because it seems pretty labor intensive, not just on the county side, but on the grower side as well. And I'm trying to see if that is just from a natural distrust of government, which I also have myself, and they want to keep their own keep their own data, which I totally understand. But I'm trying to find that balance of cost and accuracy of data, and making sure that we're being efficient, but not over regulating and putting our thumb on growers as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have a sizable amount of people who want to use meters. It's their primary measurement method. So we're investing the time, but what we're seeing is that it works well for most people, but that 10 to 20% are not getting good data. And so that's where the criteria comes in. I also agree with your point on it took 3 or 4 years of Watch before people were comfortable. And there were several meetings where all we heard was that it didn't work. And now we're hearing that it seems pretty reliable. So I think the comfort level timeline is pretty long on some of this.
So I think it needs to come from, grower to grower versus from, up here on a dais to grower as far as accuracy of watch and that, because I think that'll really help. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any public comment on?
Larkin Harmon, Clayton Water District. It does take a long time to get comfortable with the methods. We guys got to remember our cycle runs on one whole year. And so, we've only got to try it a couple of times, really, when you think about it. Months go by in the rest of the world, but, our world works a little slower. The only comment that I would have as far as the meters go, 10 days is kind of a quick turnaround to be able to put a meter back on. I do use the Erie Watch system, so I'm not a part of the meter crew, but at least 10 business days would probably be more reasonable. You got to order a meter and then get somebody out to install it. So 10 business days might be more reasonable than just 10 straight days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Michelle Lascoity. For a farmer, that is, of course, very careful in general for economic reasons. And of course, with the heightened regulations that we're facing these days, our ability to use those flow meters is very important, at least to my family. You've heard my husband talk quite a bit about using the satellite programs. We're so paranoid that we actually use the satellite programs and compare them to our flow meter data monthly. And I would like to say that I think many times, like in my world, it might appear that something is being done on in an underhanded way, but it is possible that the grower is just trying to get a handle on operating a flow meter. You might know they're expensive. There are also several different vendors. My family has probably 5 or 6 different kinds of flow meters on our property, depending upon when we put in the drip irrigation system, when we redevelop properties. And just like other technologies, they start to change, they have problems and all of that. And so you have to keep at it. I mean, very much. And even with the best intentions, some of ours go bad. The battery runs out or whatever. And as Larkin was saying, we look at it, maybe we don't look at it daily, but by the time we get there, it just is very much of a process. And I would hope that we would give these people a chance that are trying to use the flow meter method and have elected to do it because it works for them on a cultural basis in trying to raise a crop and getting the check at the end of the day from raising that commodity and selling it, versus, moving them to something that might be more difficult for them. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Michelle. And just real quick, if I may ask, how is the comparison going between watch and your flow meters? Are you finding it to be fairly accurate, or are you finding some discrepancies?
They're not equal, Bobby.
Okay,
They're not equal.
thank you.
Have a couple comments on this item. The first is just a point of clarity. Under the Exhibit A, the suggested language, the first section, monthly meter reads, paragraph 3 reads, if 2 months consecutive or non-consecutive of data on any meter in a farm unit are missing or unusable within 1 calendar year, the grower will be moved automatically to satellite measurement. On its face, it's just kind of a confusing paragraph. It's not clear whether this is saying if you missed 2 months of reporting, so you have the data, you just didn't report it in the time period, and so you've done that consecutive or non-consecutive, now you're going to move to Land IQ, or if you're actually missing data for 59 days or anything up to 2 months, right? Those are two very different things. Missing the actual data your flow meter didn't record versus missing the reporting deadline and not reporting in time. I think it's the former in conversations with Stephanie, but it'd be helpful maybe to just clarify that in this language because it's a bit confusing as it's currently written. So that's the comment about the clarity of the language. But also want to take this opportunity just to talk about something we've talked about before, and you're probably tired of us bringing it up, but I think it's really important, and that's the need to pass or to put together a policies and rules package, or a comprehensive rules package is what we've called it in the past. Presumably, this additional language, these refinements would be passed in a resolution, and then this resolution would be added to the other 16 resolutions that contain all of the GSA's rules and regulations. For reference, 69 pages of this large agenda packet you guys have today are just resolutions on relevant to measurement. And then there's another 9 resolutions on other rules. And so if you imagine being a grower trying to sort through the rules of this GSA, it's incredibly frustrating. I have brought in the past a stack of all the resolutions, but I didn't feel like carrying around 7 pounds of paper today, so I didn't bring it. But there's a lot of confusion around trying to sort through the resolutions, cross-reference them. Some of them have apparent contradictions in language, and so you have to kind of read them and interpret which one was passed when, and it's just very confusing. And so we've suggested it in the past, we've been suggesting it for years, but I think it's becoming all the more important, as Larkin pointed out, as the allocation is decreasing, it's more important to understand the rules and regulations of this GSA, and we'd recommend passing or putting together a comprehensive rules package. Last year, I think it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, you guys put together a rule summary, very helpful, but it's not a rules package. It doesn't codify the actual language of the resolutions into a black letter document that can be referenced, that actually can be understood and read as the rules and policies of the GSA. This isn't a foreign or novel concept, right? Like when you guys pass ordinances as a board, that gets codified into your municipal code. This is how it's done in other forms of government. It's how it's done in other GSAs. I have as an example here, Westlands Water District, their regulations for groundwater allocation and use in their subbasin. There's Article 1, there's a terms and definitions. It moves through everything regarding allocation, regarding use. It's a much more easy document to understand. Growers can understand what they're working with. And I think it hasn't been a priority of the GSA to date, but I think it needs to become one. So Malwa has put together a draft. We've put together a draft document, actually, just taking the language of the resolutions and trying to codify it. But at the very least, wanted to share with you guys our draft table of contents. It's just an example of how this could be done. It's done in most other water districts and GSAs, and I think it's time that it be done here. It's something our members have asked for, and it's a frustration that we just hear constantly over and over again, that it's really hard to understand the rules here because they're all in resolutions and they just keep getting added to. So would recommend that be done, and in light of refining the flow meter resolution, recommend that we move forward with a comprehensive rules package. So thank you.
Noah?
Thank you, Supervisors. Devin Avilas, Agro Cooperative. Just one comment I wanted to make. I think, when we start talking about the flow meter issue, it's very similar to all the other measurements. Everybody's going to have what they like. We personally, at the fields I manage, this year switched only to flow meters. And the reason is we cannot, the telemetry data, or not the telemetry, but the remote sensing is not matching. So what does that lead to? Us filing an appeal every year. This is going to be the third year that we've filed an appeal. So that's the reason why we want to stick with our flow meters, is because we just don't believe that the remote sensing in our area, every area is different. You know, Michelle's area could be much different. So hers might be very tight. Ours is not. You're talking thousands of acre feet higher. So that's the material amount. So that's why we, for our ownerships, are requesting the flow meters. Just on this, just a couple things to clarify, and I think I've already asked this of Stephanie and our staff, but our other GSA staff. The calibration timing within the calendar year. So just to clarify, if the calibration report were to expire effective July of 2025, as long as the grower were to provide a new calibration report before the end of 2025, then that it would remain to be a valid flow meter. That's one question. And when it comes to the purchase receipt dates, so if the calibration report in the box says 2023, it's not purchased until 2024, then it would not need a renewal until 2026, just clarifying that. On the replacement of a flow meter if it malfunctions, I understand the timeline, have no problem with the timeline. But are we going to be required to do a new inspection report each time? Because again, that all that adds up. So I just want to make sure that we address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin.
Happy to summarize some of that.
Please.
Okay. We do not ask for an additional inspection report if when you take the meter off, you're putting it back in the same way, same installation. So no additional installation report is needed. In terms of a calibration report, what we are proposing is extending it. So it's 2 years from the date of the calibration plus time until the end of the calendar year. So that'll give you time in the off season. So if it expired in May of 2025, you would have until the end of 2025, essentially buying yourself 6 or 7 months. And there was one more, but I don't have great notes on it.
It's about 2 months of the data, whether you include missing, and I think the question might be adding late or unusable. Is that correct, Noah? Clarify.
Yes.
So,
So what
conjunction
we
with late, unusable, or missing, I would say.
Thank you. That is helpful. So what we have said is if you report in January, February, and you don't turn in anything in March, and April is higher than February, we can see a clear trend line. We will take your April, but we'll count March as missing. If it's the same use as February, then we're going to do a little bit more investigating. So missing meaning it is not turned in. And if you missed 2 months, then you would be moved over to satellite measurement. I think that is pretty generous, but we're also trying not to give people 2 months worth of free water, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's more has to do with the language, right? So like codifying the language to be just a little more clear instead of just stating missing, but adding potentially missing, late, unusable,
we can do that.
Just codify and just clearing that up, making a little more concise, I think would be helpful.
And just to clarify too, the meter data, which is applied water and ET of applied water, are never really going to match. Your applied water should always trend higher. If it's trending lower, something's going on. You're applying more water, but what we are measuring and the allocations care about is really what's consumed, which is the ET of applied water. But even then, I think everybody probably agrees, we want people to meter. Meters are an extremely effective tool for managing your water. We just need to get data on a regular basis.
So this brings up another question that I have regarding discrepancy. You know, like Devin is saying, he's filed an appeal for 3 years in a row. And I'm assuming because the water or the flow meter is less than what the ETAW is saying.
One could make that assumption.
Well, I mean,
I don't
How-
want to comment on it, but I think that is a reasonable assumption.
okay, so I mean, what percentage of folks are appealing, and what generally is that discrepancy? You know, because we've had Michelle here saying, and forgive me, Mark, Michelle, I feel like I heard Mark saying that they're pretty, you know, one might be less and the other one's more, and then on another farm unit it might be more and the other one's less,
Mhm.
and it kind of evens out. But then I hear Michelle, she's saying that there's a big discrepancy kind of across the board. They're not equal. Okay, but I should say, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how accurate is it, and what are we doing to modify watch moving forward, if we are doing anything when we get updated meter flow data? Are we constantly trying to correct watch, or is that kind of, it is what it is?
That's a good question. So we did have 3 years doing a fairly extensive verification project, and that was growers' way of seeing what their meter data looked like, and we were double checking that those meters, when we were visiting them with permission, were measuring what the Fuji calibrated meter that you put on the pipe measures. So meter data plus Land IQ plus Zero Watch. So we had 3 years of that. And we had a substantial amount of the subbasin that participated in that. What we heard, and I don't want to segue to the next item, but we heard last time that people were kind of done with that. They'd chosen the method that they liked, and we're kind of living with that. We have provided feedback, both to EraWatch and Land IQ on the results of the verification project. But what I see is that these are all kind of within 10%. Just 10% is a lot sometimes. And so I think they are getting better. I've seen new data that suggests we're trending towards 5%. But with meters, there are an equal number of issues. And that is kind of what you're seeing in this
Sure.
item. The meters are not a perfect fix. They have to be visited, and sometimes they go bad.
Yeah. And I think to Michelle's comment, you know, as far as helping people, you know, there's a lot involved with meters, but it's still, it sounds like a very small percentage, because if 20% of the growers are using meters as their primary method, and only 10 to 20% of them are experiencing frequent problems, I mean, you're still talking about 2 to 3% of the overall growers that are having problems with meters. And I think, you know, codifying a policy like this, as long as we're being reasonable, and because it does take up, you know, a lot of time, and obviously we want to be accurate as well. Um, but you know, we want to be as accommodating to those who want to choose meters as much as we can. But it still seems like, and not every grower is as on top of things like most of the people who are in this room. And I think that it could also be a big thing as well. And I know that you've expressed multiple times that, you know, there are some growers that don't watch. I mean, it's a very small percentage, but there are some growers that don't watch anything almost ever.
We still have people we can't reach.
Right.
That's not great.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Walmoff. I think the only comment that was not addressed that I heard was in regards to the 10 business days versus 10 days. I'm not sure how we arrived at 10 days, but I just wanted to check in with you and you thought if you think extending it to 10 business days would be something that would work.
Yes, absolutely.
Phenomenal.
The suggestion from our grower was 5 days, so we doubled it. That's how we got 10.
Seems more than fair. Okay. Unless there's any additional public comment, I know we don't typically go back out for public comment, but you know, in the name of transparency and working with the growers, I just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity. But seeing none, we're going to bring it back to my colleague for a motion.
So are we looking to approve with amendments or a kind of a blanket general approval to move forward with the comments that have been made today? What are we looking to do here?
I think we can incorporate language for the business days. I think we can also go back and check the language around missing and see that it's super clear. And then hopefully it could go to the board of directors, full board.
Excellent.
I'll make a motion to approve based on those changes.
And I will second.
Director Romhoff,
Yes.
Director McCauley.
Yes,
Vote passes 2-0.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 6, which again is an action item, consideration and recommendation to the board of directors to enter into an agreement with David's Engineering, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $250,000 for the 2025 flow meter telemetry,
Telemetry.
I got it. Pilot project to support the groundwater allocation program with the term date of April 30th, 2026.
Thank you, Director. Stephanie Anagnuson with Jukta Patessa. A little bit of background, Supervisor Walmoff, we brought a contract last time with David's Engineering for an update to the verification project. So it was going to be another year of doing that. And the feedback in this committee meeting was there's an element in there that's pretty interesting, but not the whole contract. So Chukta is going to walk through what we've chosen to focus on here, which is telemetry, a word that many of us have issues with. It is not just you, Director McCauley. It's sort of a joke within the department. So go ahead, Chukta. No.
Yes, she did.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'll be going over the proposed contract with David's Engineering for the 2025 flow meter telemetry pilot project. If approved, the timeline for this project will run from May 2025 to April 2026. The scope is to develop a pilot project with interested participants who have existing flow meter telemetry equipment already installed for use with meters as a primary measurement method. At the end of the project, David's Engineering will prepare a document that summarizes the evaluation and review of the telemetry options with recommendations for implementation. County GSA staff will lead grower engagement, outreach, and in-field data collection. Did I go the wrong way? This is a table with an overview of the cost per task. Task 1 has a budget not to exceed $200,000 for use for the evaluation and testing of the flow meter telemetry options, which includes working with participating growers to test the existing equipment in the field, along with processing and analyzing data that's been collected, as well as the deliverable of the final documentation of the evaluation and review of the telemetry options. Task 2 has a budget not to exceed $50,000 for any on-call support that is not in the project proposal but is needed for a successful completion of the project. Up to $45,000 of Task 2 can be used for in-person training, support, or assistance from DE, as well as participation in grower meetings and/or presentations. And up to $5,000 in Task 2 can be used for direct costs such as for equipment.
Thank you, Chukta. And to your point, Supervisor Wamhoff, meter data is very intensive, both for county staff scrubbing, as well as growers taking these reads and having to go from meter to meter. So telemetry potentially is a cost-effective option if we can get it to work. The technology has changed a little bit. It used to be that whatever telemetry option you bought needed to be the same brand as your meter, but now there are telemetry options that are agnostic to what brand you choose. So the idea is that we could do a pilot, and we've already had a fair amount of interest in the pilot, and then see if this is something we can roll out to everybody to make meters a much more practical option. And one of the things people love about telemetry is you can set alerts on it. So if you have a weird flow rate, that might indicate a leak. It is potentially really helpful with managing water. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Tupta. Director Walhoff, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so what are we, I know you said we potentially plan on rolling this out. Give me the end game for the benefit of having flow meter telemetry data.
Sure. We get a document. This is essentially a pilot where we experiment and see what works. And then we get a document at the end that makes recommendations on how to roll this out for all folks with meters. That would potentially save them time because they don't have to visit every meter every month, running the risk of not turning in data or a meter going bad. They would know automatically. Would save us some time too, because the data goes to a platform or a portal.
Okay. 'Cause I mean, it's a lot of money. $250,000 is a lot of money. And so I'm trying to make sure that that the potential return on that investment is worth it, because that's a substantial amount coming out of
It is.
fees.
And I would say this, if we didn't think meters were going to be around as a primary measurement method, we should not do this. But because we have what I think is a growing percent, it used to be 10% we're using meters, we're now up to 20% as a primary measurement method. I think it's worth investing on something to save people time and potentially save some water when they're alerted to different things going on with their meter.
And have no other counties or GSAs done any sort of meter telemetry pilot?
Not with multiple meter brands. The McMullen GSA requires one brand of meter, and those are all using telemetry.
So this is, essentially going uncharted territory and
That's right.
us making that investment for potentially other counties and GSAs to use as well, right?
Yes.
Is there any way we can capture some of that to recoup some of these funds if others want to use our data?
Well, we don't share the data with others, but
Well, having it
methodology.
being a viable option, I guess. I don't know. I'm just trying to think outside the box here when it comes to.
No, it's a good idea.
funds.
I will say, and we've kind of talked about this in the Chowchilla GSP Advisory Committee. We tend to get low numbers coming in for actual build information from David's. So they're showing us kind of the top option that's not money that's already spent. It's often half as much. So I don't know that this is a $200,000 project. I think it might be $100,000 with lots of public reporting.
Gotcha. That makes me feel better. And then for the on-call support of $45,000, how many hour-long phone calls is that to David Engineering?
I don't want to do the division right now, but what we're hoping is that we can be responsive to growers and schedule grower meetings. For example, what we did in the verification study was they got a pretty substantial report that compared their data. This would be the same sort of thing. So it could include data analysis for individual growers that participate as well as meetings. Again, they bill per the hours they actually spend. It's not that they spend the money. And I think they are pretty successful at coming in, typically at 50% of what's quoted. The annual report costs for Madera Sub-Basin are like 50,000 with a contract for 100,000, for example.
Do you know what their hourly rate is?
Depends on what type of engineer you have,
Okay.
but I mean, it's
It's an
probably-
engineer's time, basically.
or an EIT engineer in training. I mean, not principal engineers, well, services, right? So they're trying to give us the people that we need, but not overcharge.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for your questions, Director. Do we have any public comment on this item?
I'll just build off some of your questions, Supervisor Ramhoff. First, want to say Davis Engineering, MAWA has appreciated their work here in the Madera Subbasin. I think all the growers have. I mean, has been super helpful. However, it seems like the deliverable of this, or looking in the scope of work, the deliverable for this agreement is a technical memorandum on telemetry, the use of telemetry. And as you asked, and as Stephanie pointed out, telemetry is used in other subbasins for Sigma allocation tracking purposes. May not be on the scale and the exact way that we envision using it here, but it is used in other places. And so as you pointed out, this is a substantial amount of money. This alone right here is the cost of adding a whole additional measurement method, right? This $250,000. So perhaps, if Stephanie indicated that David has billed a lot less than this up to or not to exceed amount, perhaps this could be revised to indicate or to represent more what the actual anticipated expenditure will be. It's just a lot of money for to explore telemetry to end up with a technical memorandum. MAWA agrees that telemetry moving forward on flow meters is a necessity in the subbasin, but this is just a large expenditure. And so I think your line of questioning makes a lot of sense. And maybe we could revise this to just reflect more the anticipated expenditure instead of a not to exceed amount.
Thank you, Mark Peters again. I think telemetry can make a lot of sense. And we did a good job of finding out what it costs to validate and get telemetry to get to an endpoint. But then we have to implement telemetry, and I don't understand the cost to growers, and I certainly don't understand the cost to the staff or David's engineering for further help on the implementation phase. So I think we need to find that out also, because it is very expensive and you wonder how many people will ultimately use it. If used, it's wonderful.
Larkin Harmon, Clayton Water District. I think my comment is probably to scrap the study. That would be my, if this was my world, I don't think we would study that. I think that Madera County has been, the tip of the spear on a lot of things, and maybe we don't need to be the tip of the spear on this one. Maybe we can let another GSA be the guinea pig for it, and then, we can understand what their pitfalls were and apply it when it's time to apply it. I think as growers, choose flow meters, maybe they implement telemetry on their own, they compare their own data. We don't need the government necessarily to run the study. We can do it in our own farms and see if it works for us. And then if there's a push and there's enough of us that tend to like this, then maybe we can bring it back to the GSA in a few years and say, hey, maybe we can implement this in tandem with the meter readings. Thank you. And $250,000 is an awful lot of money. I mean, that's like $1 back for everybody's admin fee. I mean, it's just, it seems like an awful lot of money. And I realize that they may not use the full amount, but I think that there's better applications that we could probably use that money for, maybe like an accounting platform. Thank you.
Devin Avilas Agro Cooperative. On the telemetry, we have been utilizing telemetry for many years. It is useful. There is no doubt about it. Is it pricey? Yes. What in agriculture isn't pricey anymore? But it does give you, as Stephanie had mentioned, some alerts and other stuff when you have people on one side of an orchard versus going to another side. So it can be beneficial to the district. Now, one of the things that we have to remember is the GSA is the water district for the county. So I don't know how many water districts there are in the state of California that don't require meter reads. I mean, that's something that we have to remember. So using this now, is telemetry perfect? No. Are you going to have issues? Yes. And now we have to remember that telemetry is only going to tell you what's going on with that flow meter. If that flow meter fails, then all of a sudden you don't have anything reading. So can that happen? Absolutely. Can a mouse or some other critter eat through those wires? Yeah. So again, that stuff, it's going to give you a read. The positive thing with telemetry, going back to appeal, is if you have it set up properly, it's going to be taking pressure readings before and after your filters. So with a regression analysis done by your telemetry company, it basically can back into a relevant range of how much water was pumped during that period of time. So that has been helpful, and we and the companies that we manage have used that data to support that in our appeals process with the engineers. So that's the comments I just wanted to make on that. And then Stephanie, I do want to compliment you on the fact that you are sharing this with your staff, the fund that we have. So good for you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment online?
So shall we pull this? Seems like where it's going, huh? Okay.
I think I would just inquire, I'm not immediately opposed to the idea of letting somebody else go first as was suggested, and maybe we can piggyback on some of that information. Obviously, there's some advantages to going out and being the first to get this technology in place, so that way we can, better do what we're doing here. So, but help us understand as far as, where we currently are today, how we're utilizing data that is provided to us through telemetry. And so how do we stand today? And if we were to wait to look to, I guess, implement some sort of structure around this, what would that look like?
Sure. So the way we get data right now is growers are going to each meter physically, taking a photo, filling out a form with the QR code. So we can continue to do that. We do have some larger growers that are pretty interested in that, but they're in telemetry, but they're definitely not here right now. So this may come up again. We don't, I don't know of any studies that show how to use telemetry with multiple brands of meters. And I think that's really the challenge here. Telemetry on an individual grower level is different than the agency having that option. But I think it's fine to kind of put it on a back burner, talk about it in a year, see what feedback we get from other people. We don't need to go into this and spend extra money that people aren't supportive of.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like what I said before, just us being being on the precipice of this technology when there's other GSAs that are much larger and much better financial positions to be able to go on these. I don't want to call it an expedition because that sounds rude, but to go on these, fact-finding missions and spend, $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 on these types of things. I just think that we're not really in that position to be able to be the tip of the spear in that aspect. And I don't fully understand that, the staff time and those types of things involved that would make this more efficient, but it's always a balance, right? And I just don't think that I feel comfortable spending that amount of money with, potentially to get something that we don't know how usable it's actually going to be in the end.
I think that's true. We don't know how feasible it is to implement telemetry with multiple brands until we study it.
Right.
So but you can wait 2 years, 5 years.
It'd be good to just check back in, and I think probably at some point somebody will take this endeavor on.
And I am curious on that note, in your discussions with folks up and down the state, different GSAs, are there any others that are looking to do something of this nature? Like take a look at how we could implement something?
There are districts that use meters and telemetry, but not multiple brands.
Sure.
That's the key difference. And in many cases, I feel good that we didn't ask for a certain make and model with meters because growers have strong preferences there. And one of the most popular ones is the one that has some issues. So I think we're okay. I think at some point someone will figure this out, and if we can follow someone else's lead, that's fine too.
Okay. Director Waloff, any additional questions or comments?
No, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I think we're going to move on to our next item, which is item 7, a discussion item, request for feedback on the proposed budget for the fiscal year 25-26.
Thank you, Stephanie Agneson, Director of Water and Natural Resources. What you're seeing is a preview of the budget that will come before the board in budget hearings the second week in June. So we'll start with revenue. We have 4 main sources of revenue. The biggest is state grants, and I'll go through those. We also have the admin fee, which we've been talking about, which is paying for the demand management. We also get some staff time reimbursement. If GSA staff work on flood and drought, we time track and get reimbursed. We also have penalties, which of course we would like to be 0, but highly variable, meaning sometimes a few $1,000s and potentially quite a bit more as the penalty increases. Here is a graph that looks at revenue. And what you can see here is the majority is coming from grants, the large bar on the left. That's $13 million. The GSA fee is 2.8 million. And then interfund or staff time being reimbursed is about 100K. So we'll go into each of these in a little bit more detail. We have 4 separate state grants that we anticipate next year. The first is the multi-benefit land repurposing, MLRP. This is paying people to take land either out of active irrigated production and do something else like solar or recharge or pollinator habitat. We also have 3 recharge grants. All of them are putting in turnouts on facilities. So the GSA admin fee is the 2.8. We requested the same amount as last year, not using the CPI. So it did not go up between the future fiscal year and this year. The admin fee has constraints on how it's used. It cannot be used for projects, but it can be used for outreach and grant administration, studies, as well as the demand management. And then the last one there is our staff time for flood and drought being reimbursed from those other budget accounts. So shifting now to expenditures, we've tried to group these in ways that make sense. The county budget has fixed categories, so we're trying to group in ways that I think can be communicated to the public a little bit better. The first is professional services. This is where we're spending for demand management. This would include ERWatch and Land IQ. Also, we have a monitoring well network that is visited, also technical services like financial analysis or legal. Multi-benefit land repurposing, that's the actual payments to growers. The Prop 68 recharge, those projects will go out to public bid next year. So that's anticipating construction related costs. We thought some pie charts might be helpful in understanding where the money goes and probably placing some of the discussions earlier with the last item as well as with the measurement item in context. So if you look at the professional services subcategory for regulatory compliance, this is where $1 million is going. Much of it is in the demand management. That's the Land IQ, Era Watch, and some support for how to do those allocations and generate reports. You'll also see some time for monitoring well visits. Annual report that I mentioned earlier coming in at 50K, so pretty minor. The next category in professional services is the technical group. That includes finance, recharge, land repurposing, and legal. There you can see that we have considerable requirements from the state in terms of what we have to do with land repurposing, including consultants. And probably we're saying most of the time when we hire specialized consultants, they're paid for with a grant. Not all the time, but most. So a couple takeaways from looking at the revenues and expenditures. We've been extremely successful with grants. I know we did a presentation in November where we went through the last 5 years of our finances, and basically, although we do collect an admin fee, we're collecting twice as much in grant funds from the state. And this year, or next year, should be especially helpful, bringing in 13 million in grant funds to help growers. Only 20% of the proposed budget is coming from the GSA admin fee itself. And then just a little note, we do time track. So we are charging grants for our time, and about 25% of staff time overall was reimbursed by grants last year. Happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. Director Wolof, any questions?
No questions. Just want to thank you for the time and work that you and your team put in. It's noticeable and it's really appreciated. And thank you for putting that in kind of a perspective that most people who aren't in the know can look at it and easily understand where we're at and how things get paid for and how revenue comes in. And if we could find a grant for the telemetry project. That'd be great.
Oh, we're already thinking about that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that, though.
Fantastic. Thank you, Director. Any public comment?
I'll just echo the gratitude, clearly the effort that you guys have put into obtaining grants has been really successful and very helpful for growers in the basin. So thank you. And thank you for providing financial information. MAWA, we asked for that for a long time, and it's been really very, very helpful to be able to see. I think the discussion we just had about the David's contract, or the discussion we had earlier about the measurement, they highlight why it's important for growers to be able to understand the finances of the GSA. It can't be a black box, right? We have to know where revenue is coming from and what we're spending it on. And so this kind of information and the report that you guys provided last year is really helpful, very appreciated. We want to thank you for the time that it took to prepare that. Maybe would one suggestion on this report or this budget, it could be helpful to provide it in the format that the financial report that you guys provided last year was provided in, that same format, that it kind of broke out what those technical services were or gave discrete numbers to each of those subcategories, if you will. And so it could be helpful to present the budget that way, just to give growers a better picture of exactly how much is spent on measurement, or how much is spent on professional services, how much is spent on legal, that kind of thing. I think that would be really appreciated, but in all, just grateful for the information and for the direction the GSA is moving and trying to make sure that this financial information is presented very clearly. So thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Larkin?
I just want to say thank you again. Same thing as Noah said, pretty much. Thanks for giving us some of the financial data. Don't kill me, Stephanie, but as a suggestion, maybe I should have made this public comment at the beginning. It would be kind of nice if monthly we had a little bit of a budget update to know where we're at, what's going on. I think most meetings kind of open up with the financial situation, where we stand, and that may help our recommendations on how much money we have left, how much money is getting allocated to what. Maybe the telemetry could have made it in there if, we'd have known exactly where things were going. So I guess my suggestion for an agenda item would be to add budget on there monthly. And so we can know where we stand, make better decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also wanted to just make a compliment and a small suggestion. $13 million that you went out and got in grants is unbelievable, outstanding, fabulous. And I read it, of course, beforehand, and then I said, okay, yeah. And went, I think maybe we need to talk about it on a per acre basis because growers are getting charged on a per acre basis. And here we have something that I think equates to grants coming in from the outside of about $110 per acre. That's friggin' outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Freaking outstanding. Let's put that on the news. Stephanie? And I know a monthly update can be kind of difficult, but we are doing, at the Board of Supervisors quarterly updates on our budget and how we're managing that. So perhaps that's something we might be able to
I
do.
think so. Let me
Okay.
consult with the finance staff and see
Okay.
what works, but I like that idea.
Okay, thank you. Director Walmoff?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Unless there's any further discussion on this item, we're going to move on to item number 8, which again is a discussion item, a request for feedback on the draft policy on farm unit changes at year end relating to carryover and penalties. Stephanie?
Thank you, Stephanie and Agneson, Director of Water and Natural Resources. This is our less developed item, so it is less developed in order to get early feedback. So I think everybody knows, but our farm unit is a concept that was developed to help growers manage their allocations that mimic real world conditions, meaning you're not just managing the acre, you're managing multiple acres. And so farm units exist within farm unit zones and allow for use and transfer of water. So that then has a couple of things that happen when people buy and sell land. So probably we should say the landscape for negotiating lease agreements is changing. So whereas Sigma was probably not incorporated in a lease agreement or in an escrow process, it should be now. You should be asking if there's any penalties. You should be asking if there's any carryover associated. And so those issues are coming up for us as growers shift farm units at the end of the calendar year. So here's a couple, and there's just, I think, one more slide after this, because we did want to get a lot of feedback. For carryover, that's all the water that you haven't used the previous year. It would include anything that was credited for recharge. And so what we currently do is if a farm unit is splitting, we proportionally share that carryover. So if it's 100 acres and it's splitting 50-50 and there's 100 acre feet of water of carryover, they're each getting equal amounts. So it's not fancy math. It is just proportionally dividing the carryover. We have had people, however, who've negotiated lease agreements that share the carryover in a different way, and we would like to follow their lease agreement, but we need some kind of formal policy. For example, you might have a farm unit and decide to lease half of it to someone to create their own farm unit, but you want all the carryover because you are the owner. That seems fair as long as it's agreed upon with the person you're leasing to. So the idea was we can follow a lease agreement as long as it's provided to us. Not a big deal. The penalty one is a little bit trickier. We attribute a penalty to the farm unit itself. That's multiple APNs sometimes. We also provide a penalty breakdown by the APN in the bill. So for example, if you had 4 APNs in a farm unit, you might have 1 APN that didn't actually have any penalty and 3 that did. We have that happen periodically. So If the penalties are unpaid, they move to the tax collector's office. Sometimes people want them collected on their tax collector bill. We've had several requests for that. And I think, the tax collector's office now has easy pay. So if you wanted to set up a payment plan for penalties, you could roll those penalties onto your taxes and then pay. However, we need to talk about what happens when the farm unit is sold, and we have had this happen a few times. So the farm unit accrues a penalty, and then it sells the farm unit. We then update our records to the new owner, and then the new owner gets the penalty and is like, hey, this isn't mine. This is last year's guy. The water code does allow us to attribute the penalty to the person. So we could send the penalty to that person who actually accrued it. But again, we need to formalize it in a policy. So those are the two things that have come up: carryover rules when farm units are split, and penalty rules that happen. Happy to answer questions or take feedback.
Dr. Wamo?
I think the question that I have is about when a farm unit sells and if it's the majority of the year, of the calendar year or not. I'm trying to think of a way to modify that slightly so it's more, the fee is more pinned on the particular person whose fault it was, and not necessarily positioned with majority of the year, even though most likely that is that person. But maybe just, and I'll have to think about it, but try to rework the language to pin the penalty on the person most likely responsible for that penalty.
Yes, we struggled with the language on that too. And without doing a fair amount of analysis, that's where we landed on. The person who owns it for the majority of the year is most likely the person attributable to the penalty. But it's not perfect. So
Yeah.
maybe the public will have suggestions as well.
Thank you, Director. Just a quick comment. So I know you're looking for a lot of robust feedback around here, and looking across the room, I think we've got 4 or 5 representatives. So I'm assuming you're going to be going out to other community meetings to seek feedback on this as well.
We certainly can, and we've had a fair amount of success just doing questionnaires to folks. So that might be a way, or as people come into the office, kind of brainstorm with them on what issues, because land obviously does change ownership, and certainly lease agreements change frequently. So we want to make sure that we are nimble, but also that we're being consistent in what rules we apply. And there is not an existing policy. We just have a process.
Then I guess my other comment would be is, in my experience, it seems that oftentimes we can have a difficult time collecting from an individual, whereas, if we put that on the property, eventually the county will be made whole. Now, understanding that, we want to make sure those that are, I guess, in violation, or, those that are causing, the violation are held responsible, it becomes kind of difficult. So I think I would be curious to hear some feedback from the. Thank you. With that, unless there's any additional comments.
I do, regarding the leases, if it's not burdensome for your office, I think that's a perfectly reasonable, approach. I mean, if you have to have a legal team to dig through, a lease, a complicated lease, that would be one thing. But if you're saying that you've dealt with it and it doesn't seem to be, overly burdensome for staff, I think that's reasonable. And I don't really have an opinion on, equally dividing the carryover proportionally by acreage. But, that's why we have these meetings. People think of things that, on their face, I don't necessarily see a problem with.
Okay,
Thank you.
with that, we're going to open up for public comment.
Clark and Harmon, Clayton Water District. Okay, so when speaking about the splitting of the carryover, so I'll give you a case scenario. If a farmer is renting the ground and paying full amount for the rent, then what they choose to do with that piece of ground or that acreage is up to them. They can farm something that's water intensive, or they can dry land farm it and save the difference on the water. If the landowner is getting the full amount of rent, then I don't see why they would get the extra or the 50% allocation that would be left behind. That doesn't make sense to me. They're making their money off of the rent that they're charging for that ground, letting the leaseor do what they choose to do, grow what they choose to grow on it. So if the leaseor tends to be, saving water, then it should go toward the leaseor because of the crop rotation, perhaps whatever is happening on that farm unit that year. Maybe you set that 50 acres aside, dry land it, try to save that water for another crop or for another year to carry it over. So if you pay your rent in full per acre, then what you grow on it should be up to the person that's renting the ground, and therefore I don't see why the saved water would be split back to the owner. The other I guess point to that would be for recharge. So if you're renting someone's ground and recharging on that ground, it's labor intensive. It costs money to recharge. It's diesel, it's hours, it's time, it's cleaning the screen every day to make sure that there's nothing in it, plugging up, etc. And so essentially you're paying for that water. So why 50% would go back to the landowner? I'm not sure. If you're renting that property, it doesn't make sense. They didn't contribute anything to it, and you were renting their ground to use that ground for a portion of time. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to me to split that when they haven't contributed to any of the costs. It would just be the landowner coming up on half the water for no input, plus they get the full rent. So I think that there's a lot of things to be worked out with this, but those are kind of some of the pitfalls that I can see or are experiencing. So thank you.
Mark Peters, maybe I can just make a suggestion. We do lease out a piece of property. We fallowed a lot of land, and then once it was fallowed and we built up a water credit, we leased out a significant piece. It's planted in corn. And for us, it's better that we handle the carryover of if they underuse water or if they overuse water. And to be clear, if I do that too much, if they overuse water, I would hope everyone is charging the leasee $300 an acre foot this year, because that's what the penalty is, and $400 next year and $500 the following year, because that's what it's going to cost the leaseor. And so in saying that level of detail, I might make the suggestion, as often as possible, don't let the county handle it and push back on the individuals and let them handle it. It's really better done in that relationship than with outside. But I was just giving you a little personal feedback on what we're doing with someone. So.
Just to build off of the last two comments, MAWA, in looking at this proposed language, thought it was beneficial, especially in relation to the carryover. The idea that there's some de facto way that it's handled, a pro rata approach, if no lease agreement or contract is presented to the county, but allowing the flexibility for buyers and sellers, lessors and lessees to negotiate the terms within themselves of how how credits are handled. That's great. It just allows more flexibility. You need some sort of backup for if there is no, or if that isn't addressed in the agreement, but it's great to allow the flexibility. So I think that would deal with it, or to Mark's point, right? Allowing the buyer, the seller, the lessor, the lessee to make those arrangements in their own agreements. Very helpful. The penalty. One suggestion, you expelled out the kind of complexities of the issue well. One suggestion would be that letting the tax collector's office deal with the penalties on the tax roll, and just having the penalty be worked out between, if there is a penalty, that be worked out during the escrow, during the buying and selling of the property. That could simplify the approach. I don't know, like you said, there's benefits to both sides, and you could think through it different ways, but kind of not letting all of that kind of just be on the tax assessor's office and having buyers and sellers work those penalties out during the sale, that could be an approach to kind of simplify the process and allow flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Devin Avilas Agro Cooperative, I think I'm just going to reiterate what they've said. The only comment I would add to that is when we as the growers come in and fill out the paperwork for a farm unit, at that point in time, maybe that's where we clarify if in the future there is carryover water, it's up to you, unit, farm manager, or whoever that is in charge of making up that farm unit. You say this water will go X. Same thing with a penalty. If this land were, or this farm unit were to accrue a penalty, this will be assigned to X, say, whatever grower that is. Then that way it takes it off the county, and you as whether the landowner or the farm manager, whoever's in charge of that farm unit is spelling out your wishes. Then if it goes to sale, I think it's the same thing. You can just make sure that before that property is sold, because most of the time this stuff runs with the land, property taxes and other stuff. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. All right, any additional public comment? Okay. Director Walmoff, any comments in response?
Yeah, I think when it comes to carryover, I think good fences make good neighbors, and good contracts are very beneficial. And I think everything should be essentially tied to the landowner. Whatever the landowner wants to, whatever agreement someone who leases land wants to make with the landowner, that's on them. It has nothing to do with us. We put everything on the landowner because the lessee's not going to get anything on the tax roll. It's going to be the landowner. And this is attorney gobbledygook, but this is what you guys have to figure out on the attorney side as far as how to best, should say, who has standing when it comes to fees, when it comes to carryover, and all of those types of things. Whoever has standing, they're the ones that are responsible, and they're the ones that have to make the deals with whoever they're leasing the land from. And if they want to, have a good contract, that's on the lessee and the landowner. It has nothing to do with it.
Yes, we want nothing to do with this. The problem is that sometimes people are not settling this in escrow, or they're not settling it in a lease agreement. And so then we end up what apparently feels like arbitrating some dispute. So ideally, we have a policy and then we just follow the policy.
I think the policy, and I agree with that, and we do not want to be the arbiters in any of that stuff. But I think the policy needs to fall on whoever has standing for that land, which I would assume would just be the owner in most cases.
Now, if we were capturing information on the application as Devin recommended, that, make the county responsible for enforcement. This might be a question for council, or are we just capturing that information and it's there? And am I making sense?
So the information that we capture on the application is used. I don't know if that answers. And in terms of making sure that when these irregularities that were mentioned have come up, it's something that wasn't thought about as being a county issue in terms of the rules. I know that Stephanie has vetted this with legal counsel before starting the public discussion, because we do have to act, so acting lawfully in both scenarios when they come to our attention, and trying to codify all of that work is, I think, her approach, sharing it. Now, the best would be that these wouldn't have popped up, but they have. So making sure we're transparent and lawful in terms of how we use data that's on applications. But somebody sells their property or leases it, they don't have to tell the county. It's just at the end of the year when it's collection or penalty issuing time, we need to make sure that the data we have is accurate and that who we're sending either carryover credits or penalties to is lawful and trying to settle or talk to two parties. We don't really want to be in that business if we don't have to. So being able to point to something for future years when this occurs, I think is a goal. I hope I answered that. Kind of not, but
Gobbledygook.
there we go.
Attorney Gobbledygook.
So let us get more feedback in interactions with growers, and then we'll come back in a month or two. But we do want something in place so that we are not arbitrating is not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Okay. And just point of curiosity, Stephanie, do you have information? I got a question here in regards to penalties. How much have we collected, or do we typically collect in a year? No, it's not the same each year, but
It is definitely not the same. I don't know how much we've collected to date. We just mailed them out. A week or two ago, we've received 5 to 10 checks. We do anticipate that this round of penalties will be sizable, and we're going to come back with some recommendations for what to do with those funds, going back into programs or something that benefits growers. So total is maybe 850,000. The Chowchilla related penalties go to Chowchilla Water District, and they go as part of the county GSA and the Chowchilla subbasin's contribution towards domestic well mitigation,
Okay.
which I think is appropriate.
okay. Excellent. So that is all we have on our agenda today as far as discussion and action items. Our next item is Director's Report. Director Wamhoff, do you have anything to report?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Perfect. Council? Director Agneson?
I was going to report on penalties, just did that. We also hosted some guests from Uzbekistan last month who were developing allocations and wanted to talk through challenges. So interesting, we've hosted in the past people from Tunisia as well. Those are global challenges with water.
Perfect. Okay, with that, we are going to go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.